My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Jesus, I continue to give you thanks for the Christmas season, celebrating with joy, and perhaps a little bit of Christmas pudding, if that's a custom in your part of the world, some leftover turkey, and why not? These daily moments of prayer with you. Today I rejoice with the Church Universal because we celebrate the feast of Saint John the Apostle and the Evangelist, the one who wrote the fourth Gospel. Saint John, you unlocked the secrets about Jesus Christ. Accompany me in my prayer. Help me to see and to believe, to grow in faith in Jesus Christ, to grow in understanding of my faith. I'm going to use the Gospel that Saint John wrote, and I want to make an act of faith. I believe in the Word of God. I believe in Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh. St. John was the youngest of the apostles, and he was the only one that stood at the foot of the cross with your mother, Jesus, with Mary. And this young lad was also amongst the first to go to your tomb that early Sunday morning. You had died, you were placed in the tomb, and there were those who went early Sunday morning. St. John was amongst them. Mary Magdalene alerted Peter and John. They have taken the Lord from the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him. Peter, the head of the apostles, together with John, made a sprint for the tomb. Peter was older, and I have a hunch that he had a bit of a paunch, a pot belly. They both ran, but the other disciple, that is John, ran faster than Peter and arrived at the tomb first. John, with due deference, did not enter the tomb so that Peter, the head of the apostles, would enter first. But John did bend down to take a sneak peek. When Simon Peter arrived after him, he went into the tomb and saw the burial cloths there, and the cloth that had covered his head, not with the burial cloths, but rolled up in a separate place. Then the other disciple, that's John, also went in, the one who had arrived at the tomb first, and he saw and believed. He saw the same thing that Peter saw, but he was the first to understand and recall what you, Jesus, had said several times about the resurrection, and that the other apostles had not understood. The burial cloths lay intact, as if wrapped tightly around the body. Yet John saw and believed. The cloth covering your head, Lord, was rolled up neatly to one side. John recognized that this is the resurrection. This young lad was the first to believe. He saw and he believed, an assent of his intelligence and will to what you had spoken about. John knew that you had risen from the dead. And Jesus, I sometimes ask, what if John had not believed? Well, I can speculate that there would be no fourth gospel, the one that speaks so explicitly about your resurrection and has helped millions of people to see and to believe. He wouldn't have written the other 3 letters that are in the New Testament either. So it is through the Apostle John's faith, through his eyes, that I can say, I believe. John did not shy away from following you under the pretense that he was too young. And John has helped to change the world because he corresponded and he said yes to following you. Believe it or not, you are also called to be an apostle. Yes, you. You, the young woman or young man on the way to university. You, the young professional already getting ready to work. You, the high school student doing your assignments. You are called to be an apostle, to witness to the resurrection of Christ, to see and to believe and bring others to believe. When I started high school, I was an adolescent in full bloom. Jesus, you know it better than I do. I wasn't interested in knowing anything about you, and I really feel sorry about that. But that's how life is, I guess, at times. Then a friend told me about a trek up a mountain. Now, how random is that? Anyhow, I was adolescent, full bloom, a trek. Who's organizing it? I asked Riley. He replied, a center of Opus Dei I go to. Opus what? Blah. Whatever. Anyway, it's kind of a macho thing that an adolescent would like to do. I'm interested in going on the trek, and I signed up. I will never forget that trip up the mountain. It was my first time mountain climbing. My rucksack was overpacked with useless items for this 3-day excursion. The first stretch was a 10-kilometer walk all uphill to climb to 10,000 feet. Nothing short of the road to hell. I emptied my bag to carry the bare essentials when I reached that point. And even so, the next day was a disaster. My rucksack snapped, there was a hailstorm. I felt like Frosty the Snowman at some point. What am I doing here? I asked myself. And I remember getting home in a foul mood. I will never step into that center of Opus Dei again. I will never go on a mountain climbing hike again. Believe it or not, that was the beginning of the discovery of my vocation to Opus Dei. Never say never. A year later, I was back to the mountain. More importantly, I perceived the inklings of a calling to follow you, Jesus, in apostolic celibacy. And even though I said I would never set foot in that center, I did go back, and I received guidance, and I was helped to pray. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, records the words of Jesus, "What do you seek? Come and see." Believe it or not, the inklings to follow Jesus came to me in a disaster of an excursion that took place more than 30 years ago. Now I look back and I thank God for this great adventure lived in apostolic celibacy. And later I received the call to be a priest. Believe it or not, the friend who invited me on that trek, his name is John. And I pray for him as I preach these 10 minutes of prayer. Believe it or not, Jesus continues to ask, what do you seek? Place yourself under the patronage of that young apostle John, in case God were to ask more of you. And as I end this prayer, I'll make 2 suggestions. One, grab a copy of the Gospel of St. John if you can today and read chapter 1, verse 35 to the very end of chapter 1. And the second suggestion is to pray to Mary. Believe it or not, Mary is in cahoots with Jesus. A short while after that excursion, I picked up the rosary beads that my parents had so often told me to use to pray, and I started praying on my own. And maybe that's why my inklings, the first inklings in that excursion, were rekindled, and I sought guidance. Mary always takes us to Jesus. Thank you, St. John, for seeing and believing. Help me to see God's plan for me and to believe. Help me to take this message to my friends today so that they too may see and believe. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, Saint John the Apostle and Evangelist, intercede for me.